Hi everyone and welcome to the AWS Online Partner Series. Today's session is a part of Together We Innovate, an online event to help you understand how AWS partners are supporting our customers' cloud computing journey. My name is Dean Lawrence from Amazon Web Services and I'll be your host and moderator for the webinar today. In today's session, you'll hear from Sumo Logic, our AWS Advanced Tier and Security Competency Partner, and their customer Ventia. In this session, you'll hear how Ventia builds continuous intelligence into its security services, enabling them to consolidate their security applications and achieve a 30% reduction in total cost of ownership after adopting a cloud-first platform, and how the security team was able to act swiftly to resolve security issues and reduce alert fatigue by 30%. Before we start the session today, I wanted to share some housekeeping rules. When you joined the webinar today, you either selected to join via a phone call or your computer audio. If for any reason you'd like to change that selection, you can do so by accessing the audio pane in your control panel. Also from that control panel, you'll have the opportunity to submit questions to today's presenters by typing your questions into the questions pane. So we'll collect these questions and address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's talk. And if we're not able to get to any of the questions due to time constraints, we plan on responding to each of you personally through email, so don't worry. At the end of today's session, you'll also receive a set of survey questions. Please take the time to provide your feedback so that we can continue to improve and understand what you require to become successful in your business. This is also a platform to highlight if you require any further assistance from AWS and or Sumo Logic after this session. And finally, this session is going to be recorded and we will share a copy of the recording by the end of next week. So to today's session, what you'll hear today, you'll hear from Paul Wilcox from Sumo Logic and Ian Atherton from Ventia, and thank you for joining us, gentlemen. So Paul is the Vice President and General Manager for Asia Pacific at Sumo Logic. And Sumo Logic are a cybersecurity and DevSecOps thought leader. Paul joined Sumo having most recently run the APAC cybersecurity solutions team at Palo Alto Networks. In addition, Paul has helped APAC leadership roles, he's held APAC leadership roles at Cylance, FireEye, McAfee, Symantec, and IBM. Paul's a strong believer in leveraging big data analytics to understand security and operational challenges and incidents in high availability production environments. So through his years of experience in the field, he brings a unique insight into how your cloud environments should be built, how they should be managed, and how they should be operated in the new ways of in the new always-on world. Ian Atherton is the IT security manager at Ventia, previously known as Broad Spectrum, and is currently working with their integration program. He has more than 22 years of experience in IT and cybersecurity across multiple business sectors, including telecommunications, banking, aerospace, government, and higher education. So just before I hand over to the two speakers, let me do a quick introduction of Amazon Web Services, or AWS as you might know us. So for almost 15 years, AWS has been the world's most comprehensive and broadly adopted cloud platform. AWS has continually been expanding its services to support virtually any cloud workload, and it now has more than 200 fully featured services for compute, storage, databases, networking, analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and of course, security. So millions of customers, including the fastest growing startups, largest enterprises, and leading government agencies, trust AWS to power their infrastructure, become more agile, and to lower their costs. To learn more about AWS, visit aws.amazon.com. Partners are a key part of our Amazon Web Services family. There are tens of thousands of AWS partners across the globe. More than 90% of Fortune 100 companies and the majority of Fortune 500 companies use AWS partner solutions and services. AWS partners are uniquely positioned to help businesses take full advantage of all that AWS has to offer and to help them accelerate their journey to the cloud. AWS's relationship with Sumo Logic is an important one to help our customers centralize visibility across operational and security use cases at scale. The Sumo Logic platform helps AWS customers by extending the native logging and monitoring capabilities in AWS to easily visualize and gain unique insight into such areas as user access, platform configurations, and changes. And that's why we're really excited to have Sumo Logic here today to talk about what they do, as well as to share what they've helped customers like Ventia achieve. So Paul, over to you.
Thanks, Dean. AWS continues to be a great partner for Sumo Logic, and we genuinely appreciate the support and thought leadership that events like this bring to the community. I think it's important for everybody to understand when it comes to delivering a cloud service to the masses, it's not just about compute, it's not just about providing storage, it's about building an ecosystem. And these kinds of events give us a good understanding of how that ecosystem works and how it benefits, the greater community. So before we jump in, I'd like to give everyone a super quick overview of Sumo Logic if you haven't come across us before, and the increased relevance that we bring in today's rapidly changing environment. As organizations frantically reconsider the validity of on-premise compute and workloads, because frankly, there's no such thing as on-premise anymore. We've gone very, very remote. Organizations are moving to the cloud at rapid scale. Where it was once exponential, it's now almost vertical. The traditional tool set that we've used to analyze, to manage, to give observability to those workloads doesn't really work in a cloud environment. So there's an intention of organizations to make changes to the way they do things. They almost have to. That's where we come in. Consumers of data intelligence are scattered. The sheer volume of data that people are using and analyzing is growing at an exponential rate, as I said before. And the fundamentals of IT security have moved well outside just the cybersec team. They've become very mainstream, and workflows have grown for all users in all organizations that embrace cyber. So it's important that we democratize this workflow. It's important that we give people access to this. And frankly, it's important that we allow people to do this at scale. So whether you're an organization that has 6 people looking at your data lake or 600 people, whether you're the kind of organization that has 1 gigabyte versus 1 terabyte, whether you are looking at it all at the same time, or whether you've got individual analysts going through stuff, it shouldn't have an impact on the speed and ability to find causes of failure, to find anomalies. Because every one of our customers has access to our entire infrastructure. We all give you the ability to scale quickly. At a time of crisis, that's when you need your platform to be able to work. You don't want it to get a hiccup. And frankly, if you're running in an environment where your vendor only gives you 1 individual tenant, so they set up a workload for you and that's what you work within, that's not going to scale at a time of need. Even worse, if you're running an on-premise data analytics platform, you're going to have massive challenges there. We tend to build those and beg and borrow and steal to get infrastructure to run those environments when times are good. When times are bad, it becomes very, very critical. So that headroom that we thought we'd given ourselves when logs start to go through the roof, when activity increases, gets taken away very, very quickly. And that headroom disappears, and suddenly we all hit brick walls at a time when you need to get your data very quickly and very, very easily. So the yes-no dynamic of legacy cybersecurity has given way to probably a more relevant view on the issues that we face. And one of those better ways of doing this is to look at anomalous behavior rather than that yes-no binary view. In doing this, we can challenge what we think we knew. In our environment, we think that this is bad and this is good. And most legacy security platforms, you'll set up thresholds that say, if it does this, then it's bad. If it does this, then it's good. We don't know in the modern attack environment exactly what good and bad looks like. So the best way to view that is by looking at data at scale. And I hate to use the term, but I'm going to, looking at big data analytics to handle cybersecurity. When we look at that at scale, when we look at it at a very coarse resolution and also come down to very, very fine resolutions, then when we see anomalies, we see something's different, it's really important to understand that different could be bad. So we need to quickly determine what's happening in the environment, compare what that anomaly looks like right now to what that anomaly looked like a week ago or a month ago or 5 minutes ago. And through that comparison, quickly come to a point where we understand what's caused the failure, whether that be human that's made a mistake and inadvertently made a change, whether that's an infrastructure change, whether that's a piece of software that's failed or an update that's caused the system to crash. What Sumo Logic does is gives you the ability in a cyber environment as well as a SecOps environment to understand your confidentiality, your integrity, your availability, all of those things that are really important to us as IT security leaders. So to that end, we're really pleased to bring you an industry IT sec leader who's at the forefront of the way of thinking. Ian Atherton is the IT security manager at Ventia. Originally broad spectrum, and they've merged together to form this one mega organisation. And today we're going to build an understanding of the learnings and the journey that they undertook from an IT sec perspective, embracing a data-driven platform and ensuring that Sumo became core and key to their IT security infrastructure. We'll also get a view on how that's played out technologically, and maybe if we get the opportunity, we'll talk about how that's culturally impacted the organisation by way of workflow, by way of getting buy-in from other parts of the organisation. So firstly, Ian, welcome and thank you so much for spending time with us at this event. It's certainly a good opportunity to tell the attendees what you've gone through. And to start with, I'm sure that most of the attendees, whilst they've heard of Ventia and no doubt broad spectrum, they'd love an overview of what your organisation looks like and what you do.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for having me here. Just to give you a brief introduction, Ventia is one of the largest essential services companies in Australia and New Zealand. We're very proud to provide the services that keep infrastructure working in our communities. We have a deep connection with defence, government, telecommunications, and a number of other business sectors. And I invite you to look for further information on our website if you want to understand the company more. It's quite impressive. Just go to the next slide. Last year, Ventia was purchased by Broadspectrum was purchased by Ventia to merge these two companies together to make the super company that Paul so nicely referred to us as. Both of the organizations had very, very strong security programs, as you'd expect for both of our customer bases. However, merging together, we had to find a way to quickly and expediently understand what both of the organizations were actually doing together and to assist us in our integration approach. Now, we both had some tools for visualizing and managing a lot of our security capabilities and programs at that time. And we went to market and we actually investigated a number of different options to either expand one of our existing capabilities or to look for something new. And as you can guess by the fact that I'm here today, we chose to actually adopt Sumo Logic to take us down that path. And it's been a quite productive path too.
Thanks. So were both organisations at the same point in the journey in terms of embracing cloud, or was there differences between Ventia and broad spectrum in that respect?
So both organizations had a cloud-first approach. In many areas, broad spectrum were well in advance to our adoption, particularly of AWS. But we both had the same directions in mind, and it was great to actually bring the thought processes together and actually join into a single strategy going forward. As with many different things, we had different approaches. So we had different capabilities and users for the same capabilities we had in place, and finding a way to actually visualize and identify how we're going to work together and how we're going to integrate these into an effect without providing an impact to the organizations at hand was a key challenge.
And whilst not technology related, were there challenges around the way that the two organizations culturally worked? Was there any impasses there that you had to deal with?
We had slightly different but aligned cultures in both organizations. Broad Spectrum had a very defense and government-based culture when it came to the way that they approached things. And Ventia, historically by its background, had a stronger telecommunications background, although there was much overlap in everything that we actually did at that time. So bringing these on board and our various different capabilities was something we had to actually work out quickly.
Yeah, I think that's important. I mean, with Broad Spectrum's defence or highly secure nature, there would have been some impasses there, I'm sure, but great that we had this platform to work through it. So what sort of challenges were you looking to solve predominantly by leveraging Sumo Logic or by moving this into a data cloud?
The first challenge that we wanted to actually solve was to actually provide a visibility across all of the different capabilities that we had across two separate environments. This can historically take a long time to actually consume, even though you have in place services. Consuming them into a central place to visualize and actually manage and start to centralize your security capabilities is inherently difficult. And this was the capability that we particularly came to Sumo Logic for. We also wanted to improve and adapt the way that we were providing our current security practices and provide more rapid, continuous insight into what we're monitoring and reacting to at this point from an integrated perspective.
So speaking of integration, we've found with a lot of customers, especially that start to leverage Sumo from a cybersecurity perspective, that other parts of the organisation start to get their claws into it and try and find or get use out of the data that cyber is bringing in. Have you found that there's other areas of the organisation that are looking to now start leveraging that from a BizOps or a DevOps perspective?
Yes, we have particularly. So our DevOps capabilities in particular have actually found a lot of benefit in actually leveraging the capabilities of Sumo for troubleshooting and insight and application management. So we've found that not only can we effectively identify potential security outliers or anomalies, but we can provide decent baselining and rapid responses to changes in environments or to integration between different parts of the organization where things such as subnet overlaps were something that you'd need to identify pretty rapidly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, obviously being a platform, you get the applications that come with Sumo Logic, but there's a level of, I think, personal development that goes into deploying one of these fundamental platforms. What did Ventia and Broad Spectrum need to undertake to get this thing up and running and proving value?
Well, when we first undertook the journey, this was an area of quite trepidation, to be honest, as it generally takes a considerable amount of time to bring across use cases and integrate services from different data sources. In the case of Sumo Logic, it was pleasantly surprising how rapidly we could integrate our data sources. In one case, a feed from a security service that we actually provided, we were able to integrate that within a single day, where previously we had taken weeks, in fact, almost months to actually get the same level of capability in place. Even though, as you say, not every capability is provided out of the box, there's generally applications and services that are there that you can use to baseline the actual services once they come in here. In most cases, we had at least a baseline of applications and services and dashboards available. But where there wasn't, they were fairly simple to develop with the assistance of our premium support TAM, which has been a godsend.
Excellent. And Dean mentioned at the start of this about a 30% reduction in mean time to remediation or a 30% reduction in the workflows that you guys are achieving. Can you give us some examples of what that looks like? Because often people like us talk about reductions in workflows and savings and all that kind of stuff, but to hear some actual real world examples would be great.
I think probably some of the ways that we would say that we actually had some benefits or some reductions in the way we actually manage and utilize the platform was our ability to easily manage the consumption of data within the service and to model the actual data consumption into separate tiers. So we actually realistically understood the ingress of data, the types of data, and level the types of data into a way which is more efficient for our environment. We could also rapidly bring on board different capabilities such as metrics monitoring at a lesser perspective and store those at different rates. So these were great ways for us to actually understand how we would consume the actual technology in place. We were also able to, based on the insights and the ability to define outliers or IOCs quite easily, or the defined tablets in there, provide meaningful intelligence and alerts via our existing Ops Genie platform out to our support teams, which again provided actionable intelligence at a realistic perspective rather than just being spammed, so to speak, by any type of alert that actually is available from the platform, which often seemed to be the case with many legacy tools.
Yeah, that's for sure. And to that end, was there, and no is an okay answer here, but was there anything that sort of stood out? Was there anything new that you discovered or hadn't thought about when you started deploying the platform? Was there any light bulb moments where you said, oh, actually, we can do this, let's go down that path?
It actually provided a number of very valuable pieces of insights as we went through the integration perspective, as it allowed us to understand particularly the consumption of data in various areas, particularly in areas where we utilize partners to actually provide services to us. So we could centralize the actual logs of security and non-security based services and baseline and have a more realistic way of tuning and optimizing these services and selecting the right paths or understanding the right traffic which is going into the right areas more rapidly than we would if we had to interrogate individual specialized management services for each of our capabilities or functions.
It's actually a really good point. It's one of the things that in our marketing we talk about democratizing data, and you mentioned, third-party partners and suppliers becoming engaged in that process. I think that's a really important part about this, is it's not really closed loop. It's an ecosystem of partners, and virtually anybody can be given access to that should you choose to, allowing you to build that platform underlying every single part of your cybersecurity organization. So really good point. So sort of going back to the top, Ian, what was it in particular that drew you to Sumo Logic? Because frankly, I've been on the other side of the desk and had people talk to me about their stuff, and I've been the one doing the talking, and most of our presentation decks look very similar. When the rubber meets the road, that's really what matters. So what was it in particular about Sumo Logic that stood out to you and started you on the journey of becoming a customer and partner of ours?
So there are a number of things. So primarily, when we had the initial conversations with Sumo Logic, it was a very pragmatic conversation, and it was very, very targeted towards what we needed to achieve. And they guided us onto realistic but rapid deployment of our service in the environment. This coupled by the fact that we were very, very interested in the Cloud SIEM product as an add-on to the service, and the ability for it to provide us more realistic and visible responses to an already very capable platform, really attracted us to the platform and to run a proof of concept, which was very, very responsive and delivered what we needed for the majority of our use cases far more rapidly than we actually expected them to.
I do remember that part of the process. It was a very robust proof of concept, and we enjoyed it. It was great. So finally, if we look at what the future holds, now that you're immersed in the platform, now that you understand Sumo Logic's breadth and I suppose additional capability, what does the future look like? You mentioned Cloud SIEM before. Are you starting to investigate going down that path? Are you looking at broadening your imprint on the organisation. What's Sumo's future at Ventia?
Well, we've had Sumo Logic now for 9 months, so the baby's been delivered and is working way beyond expectations at the moment. We hope to and intend to mature and expand our use of Sumo Logic in the environment where it's appropriate. In the use cases we've had today, it has been very, very well received, particularly with the usage of the premium support option to provide additional coaching and support where necessary, and training to supplement the already very, very useful online training resources. However, as you mentioned, for security, our future is going to be to expand quite considerably into Cloud SIEM. As far as we see at the moment, we've already started the process of onboarding our data from into Cloud SIEM, and we're starting to see some very, very useful insights out of that service. And we hope to leverage this to provide targeted, actionable insights in a way which is palatable to the actual support staff who are actually utilizing the front-end console. Cloud SIEM has a very modern look and feel to it, and it presents the data in a way which is enticing to investigate and look into. And we're hoping that this will, as we progress on, show exactly the same results that we've had in testing and be well adopted and provide much better ability for us to make use of instant actionable intelligence and provide targeted alarms to the support teams where necessary. So we're hoping to mature this process and enjoy the relationship we built with Sumo.
You know, you mentioned something there, and it's something that we hold dear, is the interface to the Cloud SIEM product, and we hold it dear, but I think in some respects we wonder about it. It's an incredibly unique interface. It's very clean. It's very easy to find actionable insights. How much of a difference does that genuinely make to organisations like yours? I think, yeah, we think it looks pretty, but is it meaningfully different compared to the raw sort of stuff that we see most SOCs running on these days?
So only time will tell, but the early signs are that it is a lot more usable and searchable than some of the traditional approaches, which required a lot more effort to actually utilize. The first impressions for the tool is quite often, oh, that looks pretty, that's nice, and tends to result in a lot of playing and clicking around and searching through data, which is quite easy to actually sort of interpret into without too much pre-training. So I believe the future for Cloud SIEM is bright, and I believe the adoption will be quite useful across the organization.
I do appreciate that, and I think so too. It's certainly different to a lot of what I've seen in the past, and having worked with a lot of security operations centers, I think one of the biggest challenges is having so much information from so many disparate sources, no matter what SIEM product you use. If we look at the traditional approach, it just doesn't scale, and it doesn't give you the ability to get down to those causes of alert. So thank you, mate, very much appreciated. We're running close to time at the moment, so what I might do is hand back to Dean and give him the opportunity to take questions from the audience, because I think that's probably more important than me talking. But before we do that, Ian, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for being a great partner and customer of ours. We really do appreciate the effort, the engagement, the feedback that you give us as a company, and looking forward to a really bright future together. So thank you, mate. Much appreciated.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Paul, and thanks, Ian. I think it was a wonderful chat. Thank you both for spending the time. We do have a couple of questions that have come in, so I'll ask them of you now, and I might take the lead on who that gets pointed to. So be prepared for a curveball or two, maybe. Ian, I think the first one's probably best suited to go to you. I've noted a couple of quotes that you've said here, which I think provide some great context to the question. You mentioned, meaningful intelligence and alerts, and the term you used, instant actionable intelligence, which I think is perfect for any security operations center, right, or a perfect consideration for any SOC. The question here is, how has Sumo Logic enabled you to gain a real-time view into security events and threats in your environment?
So the services we've had in place today has provided us the ability to easily monitor and manage a number of events that were in there. Talking outside of Cloud SIEM, some of the standardized alerts and alarms which came out of the box, for us as an example, even though it's not exactly security, the CIS AWS Foundation of benchmark alerts that come standard within Sumo provide a fantastic way of providing instant access to alarms which actually are pertinent in that basis. Allowing those, from our perspective, to be targeted and alerted at meaningful times to meaningful groups via, in our case, OpsGenie has been a godsend. We have the same amount of ability to actually target and identify services across all of our plethora of tools and capabilities and create the right level of alarming alerts in various different ways, whether they're actioned by webhooks or emails or just by meaningful dashboards that can actually provide insights to both the executive and operational layers of the organization. If that answers the question.
Yeah, nice, thank you. It's yes, a really good context. And you touched on a point there around non-security use cases where I'll throw to you first, Ian, and Paul, maybe you can give us some background into other organizations who've seen benefit from this. And I think, Ian, you've kind of touched on one of these in the DevOps space with regards to troubleshooting, but have you seen any of your security data being able to be repurposed for non-security use cases once you've kind of correlated and centralized all that data together in a single place?
Yes, yes, we have. A lot of our security data has allowed us to provide a great insight into the actions and running of applications in the actual environment itself. So there's some crossover, particularly when it comes to services such as proxy management, etc., where we can pull out what would be considered interesting traffic for security, but would be considered performance-related traffic for application services, and allow us to tune and respond to actions or develop actions that need to be looked into or administered in a more rapid fashion.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. Paul, any others that you've seen in your travels of you know, that lake of security data that everyone puts together being used for separate purposes, let's call it?
Too many. I'd probably take up all the time we have left, to be honest, Dean. But frankly, if we look at what's happened, you know, especially over the past few years, is, you know, availability, whilst the security, you know, issue is also an operational issue, and a lot of the data that we see from a security perspective also impacts availability. We've got some incredible examples of organisations that have embraced Sumo Logic from a security perspective, and then, you know, almost overwhelmed it with operational advantages. I'll give you one example, which is esoteric, but as an airline in the US, I won't call out who they are, but they actually take engine data from their aircraft, gets downloaded into Sumo Logic. They look for any anomalous activity and determine whether that particular engine should be put into maintenance earlier or whether there's any challenges there. And that's an extreme example, but almost every single part of the organisation can leverage the data that's already in there. We talk to customers on a daily basis, people who are already customers, and they say, I'd like you to talk to these guys over here. We might have a bit more business for you because they want to do this, 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 and this. About halfway through the conversation, we turn around and say, yeah, it's not more business for us, but you should be doing this. The data that you need to analyze is already in Sumo Logic. We don't charge you for extra search queries. We don't charge you for any of that other stuff. Go and knock yourself out. Do a million queries on that same data set and get some analytics, you know, almost free of charge.
Very nice. Good use case too. I hope they're still using that in the times we live in at the moment with their travel being reduced.
They are using it.
Another question here, which I think is one for you, Ian. You talked around obviously combining the two organizations together in Ventia and Broad Spectrum. What advantages have you noticed after combining multiple business units, data together into a single platform?
What advantages? So, for instance, during our integration program, as I mentioned before, it's great to actually be able to query across both of the data sets that we have in here and identify use cases, for instance, where we may actually have crossovers of overlapping subnets in the actual data traffic that's going across. And we've been able to centralize and the actual storage of our data in a meaningful location and reduce the costs of our longer term storage, utilized with the offloading to AWS when necessary, which has been, again, using the technologies we have in place, and we want to go forward. And we've provided a single pane of glass, so to speak, for all of our different ops teams and support teams to actually visualize and manage the data where appropriate.
Very nice. And there's a final question here that I'll touch on, and Paul, probably makes sense to go to you on this one. Ian mentioned premium support model as a kind of future state consideration. What have you seen, benefits being derived from the customers, or can you give us, I guess, an overview of what that model is and what results that tends to drive?
Yeah, look, I'll start by just sort of explaining what that is, because it's a great concept, and a lot of our customers are leveraging it really well and getting increased value. Premium support is what I suppose traditionally we may have called a technical account manager on the account that works with your organization to extract more value out of Sumo Logic. Historically, in the old legacy world, you would have professional services where they, help you do the rollout, where they help you get stuff going. We don't have that issue. We're obviously cloud-based, we're SaaS-based. You switch the thing on and it's going. Where the value is extracting more value out of what you've already paid for. We've got a bunch of things like tiering of data, so you can put stuff into a much lower tier of data that may not have the same response times as that in-memory, high availability data that you need. They will help you work through that. They will help you build dashboards and queries and a whole bunch of other things to extract value. So it's about accelerating that return on investment. It's about accelerating that sort of time to value that most people crave. And those that leverage the premium support model are usually our biggest evangelists. So it's a really good system. It's a really good way to engage some great expertise, and most of our premium support people are often ex-customer practitioners that have fallen in love with us and decided to come over to the other side. So it's a really great way to get that expertise and get it engaged into your organisation.
Great, thanks, Paul. That pretty much brings us to time, so we've come to the end of the session. A big thank you to both you, Paul, and Ian as well, for being so generous with your time and spending the time talking through today. Likewise, thank you to the audience who spent the time with us. Just a gentle reminder to those on the call, fill up, please, our post-session survey. We want to ensure that we can continue to deliver information that's relevant and useful for your cloud computing journey. And finally, if you are interested in attending other sessions in this online series, just refer to the link that we've shared in the chat box. And we look forward to seeing you at future AWS events. Thanks for your time, everyone.
Thank you.